A couple of New Jersey hunters are out in the woods when one of them just falls to the ground. His eyes have rolled into the back of his head. The other guy whips out his mobile phone and calls the emergency services. He gasps to the operator and says, "My friend is dead. What do I do?" The operator, in a soothing voice, goes to the man, "Okay, calm down. Let's check to make sure he's dead first." There's silence and then a shot is heard. The man returns to the phone with the operator and says, "Okay, what do I do now?"
Guys, that's considered to be the funniest joke out of 40,000 possible options, according to over 2 million people worldwide. But why is that? Is there anything we can learn from this study that was conducted? And are there some basic core principles of comedy that we can apply to be the funniest person in every situation? Welcome to Street Psychology, where you get to learn a little bit more about the practical applications of psychology, whilst also allowing me to teach you some more tips and tricks on how to improve yourself and your surroundings based on the mind. Today's video is all about humor, what it is, why we find things funny, and how you can be a much more funnier person today. I think we all generally have an intuitive understanding of humor. We can tell when somebody is funny and when we don't find somebody funny. And we can also tell when somebody has a good sense of humor and a bad sense of humor. But what do all these things mean? Let me start from the basics and build our way up. Now, humor can be defined as our ability to both express and perceive what is funny. It is both a source of entertainment, but also a coping mechanism for tough and/or awkward situations. But humor isn't just restricted to ourselves and what we find funny. There's a largely social component of it, which is why philosophers for many years, decades, and centuries even, have discussed why we find things funny, what humor is, the sources of it, and so on and so forth. I would like to go over some of these explanations today so that you can get a general understanding of why a bunch of famous dead people thought that we find things funny. Firstly, there's an evolutionary explanation to this, which states that laughing and/or humor was developed as a way of gauging social interactions to see if the other person liked you or not. A genuine laugh was your way of being able to see if the other person was a threat. Because if they were laughing and they were going along with what you were saying, then they're probably not going to attack you at some stage. This has since become a sort of aged explanation, since we've started laughing at things such as memes and sitcoms and all sorts of stuff. But at its core, humor still does tell us how we're interacting with people. That's why when there's an awkward silence after a joke, you feel like running and hiding in the nearest closet. Why? Because, well, it was a way of gauging if the other people liked you or not. One of the newer explanations is that we laugh as a result of some form of mistake. Now, don't get me wrong, this doesn't mean that humans purely like to be pricks and laugh at other people's misfortunes. Rather, it's not the mistake. It's the emotional reward for being the one to discover it, and thus mentally undoing it. Simply put, this means that we like to be the ones to find the mistake so that we can fix them. And then there's the emotional rewards and all that stuff. This leads to the concept of incongruity, where we find things that are funny because they're juxtaposing of two radically different ideas. Taking all the big words out of it, we find things that are funny when they differ from what we expected. It is this contrast between expectations and reality, and when we feel like we've been fooled, that we decide to laugh at it.
Two fish are sitting in a tank when one turns to the other and goes, "Hey, do you know how to drive this thing?"
Our brains like to find the punchlines to these kinds of jokes, and it feels really smart when it does, resulting in a laugh. Finally, a concept I want to touch on is called benign violation, created by Warren and McCraw. This is an explanation of the darker side of humor, why we find roasts and the macabre and dark humor funny. Benign violation is a concept that states that humor arises when a person simultaneously realizes that an ethical, social, or physical norm has been violated, but also that this violation isn't too offensive, reprehensive, or upsetting. Simply put, yes, it's rude, but no, it's not too rude. The rules for benign violation is something that I will touch on in the second half of the video, but examples of this are stereotypical jokes, Trump jokes, all sorts of that kind of stuff. and is built on the concept that comedy is equal to tragedy plus time. Now, there's a lot of overlap between these three concepts that I've just discussed. And obviously humor differs from culture to culture, person to person, based on your age, your background, everything. But here are some of the ways that you're able to be funny regardless of the social situation, and also some rules for being PC while doing it. Leveraging the idea of incongruity, an easy and simple way to be much funnier is to misinterpret what other people are saying. A great example of this can be seen on the TV show Friends, where one of the characters, Chandler, often uses what is said in a social situation and flips it on its head.
Some girl ate Monica.
Shut up. The camera adds 10 pounds.
So how many cameras are actually on you?
This may require you to do some thinking on your feet, but eventually, as you practice, you'll get much better at it and it'll become second nature. The basic 1-2 punch. If you don't want people to get caught off guard with whatever you're saying, there's a really simple structure you can use to make sure no joke is awkward. This structure is twofold, but there can be a third step depending on where and what the situation is. Firstly, you have a premise. This is what gets people reeled into whatever you're about to say.
You know, I was wondering why the ball was getting bigger.
This is later followed by the punchline. This is the funny part of the joke, and it's usually where you start applying some of the principles of comedy. The punchline can either further the premise or go completely against whatever your setup is, depending on what kind of joke you're trying to do.
You know, I was wondering why the ball was getting bigger. But then it hit me.
The third step can be following through with the joke, depending on the reception that the punchline got. This usually doesn't work for puns, but it's great for stories where you can add extra details if people are finding whatever you're saying really funny. Practice, practice, practice. Practice the stories that you think might be funny and then reuse them in different social situations, refining it as you go. Bonus points if you start getting into it and use actions and voices and all sorts of different elements that you can use to refine the story. Increasing your level of energy can cause even the simplest of jokes to leave people in stitches. For examples of this, you don't have to look any further than 90s and early 2000s classical comedies from the likes of Robin Williams and Jim Carrey. This is something that even the funniest of celebrities do all the time on talk shows. They'll find one joke that received a really big laugh early on, and then they'll work on it, refine it, and use it over multiple interviews. Because why mess with perfection, right? Also, a quick extra tip if you're ever going to use benign violation in social situations and make a joke at somebody else's expense. Don't make a joke about something that can't be changed in under 5 minutes. For example, if somebody has a really bad haircut that obviously they can't change until, well, when the hair grows back, or if they have a rip in the shirt and you're out doing something in the city, don't point it out. If they can't go home and change their shirt in under 5 minutes, there is no point in raising it and making them feel uncomfortable and self-conscious. Even though it may receive a small or even a large size laugh, they'll come to hate you for it, and you don't want that. And there you have it, guys. Hopefully you've learned a little bit more about why we've developed to find things funny, and how you can develop to be the funniest person in the room almost immediately. With that being said, as always, if you've learned anything, make sure you leave me a like to let me know that you're a little bit smarter than you were coming into this video. That's all for this video, guys. If you want to watch more videos on how to become a much better person today, click the icon here. That'll take you straight to my channel so you can browse at your own pace. Or if you want to take the guesswork out of it, here is a video recommended to you by the YouTube algorithm, and you can never go wrong with the YouTube algorithm. Thank you guys so much for watching, and remember, stay psyched.